Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just want to start by thanking the member for Mulka for reminding us of what we're all here for and that we can work together for a better Northern Territory for everyone. Thank you. I rise to oppose the Petroleum Planning and Water Legislation Amendment Bill. Madam Speaker, the government talks about third-party merit reviews like they're trivial, inconsequential and meaningless when they know that isn't true. Merit reviews are essential to good governance. The Deputy Chief Minister would have us believe that they can be replaced by judicial review, but this is untrue. Judicial reviews are hard to access, they're expensive, and they look at a different thing. They look at the lawfulness of the decision-making process and not whether the decision, considering all the available information, was the right decision, a decision of good merit. And Madam Speaker, in this chamber we've heard accusations of hysteria and of people with no stake in a project using merit reviews to deliberately sabotage the Territory's economy. This is also misleading. Merit reviews are not tools of sabotage, they're vital tools of democracy. Firstly, it's simply not the case that any random third party without any stake or expertise can request a merits review. It's not as if me and my dog Billy can request a merits review into a planning decision in Katherine, Madam Speaker, or a water licence in Nhulunbuy. The third party must demonstrate they have standing to bring the complaint, and this isn't open to just anyone. They must show they have a legal interest in the matter or that they're an expert organisation, and they must challenge the decision in the courts. There are essential checks and balances. And a third party can be an ordinary person or an organisation. It could be a neighbour or an individual constituent or a community group, a landholder, a land council, and members of the public who have made submissions on a proposal. Madam Speaker, I want to thank the member for Drysdale for his thoughtful speech, but I'm curious as to how he can say that the law must not create anxiety while supporting yet another bill that we know will undoubtedly create much anxiety for many people whose voices will be silenced and whose rights will be stripped away, as we just heard from the member for Mulka. And Madam Speaker, I agree with the member for Drysdale that economic development and environmental protection should not be mutually exclusive. That's exactly what the Scrutiny Committee, of which the member for Drysdale is a member, recommended, to include a clear definition of economic development in the Territory Coordinator Bill. Yet the government rejected this recommendation. The ongoing undermining of environmental protections is not economic development with environmental responsibility, it's economic development at the cost of our environment. Madam Speaker, I'm also deeply concerned by the ongoing attacks in this chamber against those who stand up for the environment. The environment has no voice of its own. What does the CLP think that these activists want? The CLP paints environmental activists as though they're seeking to destroy society, but in fact, they're simply trying to protect our world for all of us. Unlike private industry, they're not motivated by profit. Unlike politicians, they're not trying to get re-elected. Activists are everyday people, doctors, teachers, tradies, parents, grandparents, standing up for what they believe is right. They're not trying to get rich. They're not trying to get power. They're standing up for what they know is important. And they may be the lone voice in a room of 10, as the member for Drysdale suggests, but if there are 10 people in a room and one person is screaming, doesn't that signal that something is wrong? That someone might be hurt, that someone might be in danger or distress? And why would we ignore that cry? Not all of us live the same lives, Madam Speaker. Not all of us live next to a controversial project, and not all of us are subject matter experts, and that's why we rely on that one voice, the person who's warning us of danger. We must listen to that voice, not silence it. And merit reviews are particularly crucial when the government's making sweeping changes to development laws and regulations across the Territory via bills like the Territory Coordinator Bill. When projects that once would have never been approved are now fast-tracked, when laws that were designed to protect us are being exempted, merit reviews have become even more necessary. Madam Speaker, when the government frequently asserts that the Territory is open for business and that they love the gas industry, and when they pass legislation that places these industries above the law, it's important to remember that a legal decision is not necessarily a good decision. Bad decisions, decisions that harm communities, health and our environment can still be perfectly legal. When the government claims that judicial reviews can replace merit reviews, they miss this critical point. Bad decisions can be legal decisions. And we know that our justice system is in crisis. The courts don't need the additional burden of handing out civil complaints that should be addressed through merits reviews at NTCAT. As a member of this chamber, I've seen firsthand how few opportunities ordinary people have to contribute to the laws that we create. The laws made in this chamber and decisions made by ministers of this chamber are not consulted on widely. Our democracy is already deficient in this regard. Why would we remove an opportunity for the public to correct mistakes made by government? Madam Speaker, despite the lack of consultation, at the end of the day, the government is still accountable to the people. This is how democracy works. This government seems to think that they can legislate away that accountability, but they can't. The public voted them in and the public can vote them out. We're all here as representatives of our community, and our communities must have the right to say that was the wrong decision and request that it be reviewed. Merits reviews is part of that process. It's the final independent check on controversial decisions in our democracy. And to remove this form of accountability is not minor and it's not trivial. It will not affect a small minority. It will affect all of us. Merit reviews are built into the Water Planning and Petroleum Acts as safeguards to ensure that all evidence is considered before finalising far-reaching decisions. And they also act as proactive safeguards against collusion and against corruption. Madam Speaker, let me give an example. A student taking a test will do their best and follow the rules if they know the test will be graded and reviewed. And we know that decision makers also make better choices when they know their decisions can be reviewed. Without this critical oversight, the government's removing an important check on its power. This isn't just about protecting the environment or protecting the community. It's about ensuring that fair, thoughtful decisions are made across the territory. As we've seen in other places in Australia, like New South Wales, where merit reviews have been available to the community for decades, they've refined, elaborated and applied crucial concepts in environmental law like public interest and intergenerational equity. And the merit review process doesn't just benefit the people bringing a particular case, it benefits the wider community by establishing these important and useful precedents, by deterring further bad decision making and making our communities safer, making them better represented, and making all of us more prosperous into the future. Madam Speaker, for the benefit of the chamber, I want to explain what kinds of decisions we're talking about here, who's making them and who's affected by them. Some of these we've already heard about today in the chamber. Under the Planning Act, decisions are made by the Development Consent Authority. This authority governs every planning decision, from your neighbour's carport to the Defence Housing Australia's development at Lee Point. The Planning Act governs the orderly use and development of land. For anyone in the chamber who's not familiar with it, I strongly recommend you read the purpose of this Act. It ensures that fair decisions that are clear and accessible to the community are made. With the Merits Review Bill, neighbours will lose access to fair, open decision-making and accountability, and the broader community will suffer as a result. Planning impacts everything, from our footpaths to hospitals and everything in between. And the Planning Act asserts that fair decisions must be decisions that are clear and accessible, and that neighbours can demand, or people can demand, accountability if they're negatively impacted by developments. However, when this bill is passed, neighbours will lose their access to fair and open decisions about development permits and unlawful development, and so too will the broader community. Our favourite fishing spots, our favourite bike paths, our favourite urban bushwalks rely on the Planning Act for preservation. The Territory is large and the Northern Territory Government struggles to effectively regulate our planning environment. But as we've heard from many people in this chamber, Territorians, including all of us, know and love this place, and we've all said in here we'll always care for it. People have and continue to make great sacrifices to advocate for the areas that matter most. The community essentially offers the Territory Government a free service when they engage with planning decisions. They help make these decisions better, and the tool to facilitate this engagement, Madam Speaker, is third-party merit reviews. Let's take Lee Point as an example, an area that's incredibly important to many, many people in my electorate. It's an area loved by thousands, of immense significance to Larrakia families, and a home to trees that are hundreds of years old. In May 2024, Defence Housing Australia bulldozed Lee Point in breach of their development permit. Despite a ruling that the destruction was unlawful, no further action was taken. Using the current merits review process, the Friends of Lee Point have applied for a review to save these 400-year-old trees. If this bill passes in the future, this opportunity will be lost. Or another example which we've heard about in this chamber, in 2022, under the Water Act, a 10 billion litre per year water licence was granted to a farm at Larrimah. The Merits Review Panel overturned that licence after evidence emerged that it could cause the Mataranka Springs and thus the Roper River to stop flowing. Without merits reviews, such protections for our rivers and communities will be lost. To be absolutely clear, Madam Speaker, the bill we are voting on will make it impossible for merit reviews to stop a project like the Larrimah project from running our rivers dry in the future. That is what we're voting on today. A cotton and interstate wine grower has now reapplied for this same water licence. Should it be granted and should this bill pass today, the people of Larrimah and Mataranka, already very disturbed by the changes they're seeing in their river, will have no right of appeal. There is a saying that water flows to power. Well, what we have seen in the eastern states is that it flows to power until it doesn't flow at all. We only get one chance at water, and there are many expert opinions from independent hydrologists who state that the Northern Territory is, to quote, a slow-moving train wreck when it comes to water security, and that we are about where the Murray-Darling was 30 years ago. And they also warn that changes in our systems that feed the Daly, the Victoria, the Roper and the MacArthur rivers may happen much quicker than we expect due to the karstic limestone structures of our aquifers. Territory rivers only flow during the dry season because of the springs that feed them. Take too much water from aquifers and we lose our river flows, our fishing, our food supplies for remote communities and our world-renowned biodiversity. This is what we are risking with this vote today. A judge of water adjudication in the USA, Mr. John Thorson, writes, "Water links us to our neighbours in ways more profound and complex than any others. And the removal of merit reviews from the Water Act effectively removes this ability for neighbours or downstream water users to challenge decisions about upstream water use or potential contamination risk. Decisions like the issuing of massive water licences like in Larrimah, the building of massive dams, billion-litre dams along our rivers and subsequent pumping of water from our rivers to fill those dams. The issuing of wastewater licences where highly toxic water may be left standing for years on end, and the ability of industry to re-inject fracking wastewater back down beneath our aquifers against all the Pepper inquiry recommendations. Further, Madam Speaker, many of these legislative protections in both the Petroleum and Water Acts came about because of the recommendations of the scientific inquiry into fracking, the Pepper inquiry. Creating open standing, that is, ordinary people and organisations can apply for merit reviews of fracking approvals, was a key recommendation of 14.24, for those who like the detail of the Pepper inquiry. The amendment we're voting on today throws that recommendation away. And it's unconscionable that taxpayers funded to a huge amount of money such expert inquiry conducted over 2 years only to have its recommendations shredded by ill-considered legislative changes like this. Madam Speaker, I find it almost unbelievable how often I say in this chamber, this amendment is unjustified. There is no case to repeal rights to merit reviews. As we've heard in this chamber, there are very few merits reviews open in the NT. The Northern Territory is not being ground to a halt by these reviews. There is no cause for alarm. It baffles me how afraid of scrutiny this government seems to be, so afraid that they will change the law to avoid having to explain their decisions to the communities that they represent and that they serve. These amendments will not expedite the development that the Territory wants and needs, and what we risk by removing these protections is far greater than what we stand to gain. Madam Speaker, there is a saying that by failing to prepare, you are preparing to fail. Refusing to allow merit reviews under the Water Act is failing to prepare for mistakes made about our water. It may mean our rivers cease to flow, our aquifers are drawn down, our local economies dependent on water lose out, and our groundwater dependent ecosystems like the beautiful springs at Mataranka are lost. Refusing to allow merits reviews under the Petroleum Act is failing to prepare for mistakes made about how our resources will be used and potentially ground surface water contamination with toxic fracking chemicals, the impacts of which could last for millennia and be exacerbated by climate change. Preventing such dangerous failures is exactly why we had 135 Pepper inquiry recommendations designed to mitigate the well-accepted risks of deep shale hydraulic fracturing. Refusing to allow merit reviews under the Planning Act is failing to prepare for mistakes made about our cities and roads, and means we risk not only not having well-considered town planning, but also losing investment and amenity for many long-term Territorians. Madam Speaker, as usual, I have looked hard to find the justification for this bill, but I cannot find it. The explanatory statement provides little justification for the changes made. It says, the purpose of this bill is to remove third-party merits reviews in industry development and environmental legislation to provide for industry certainty, foster confidence in the regulatory framework, and reduce project delays associated with potentially vexatious legal reviews by third parties. But, Madam Speaker, this bill is not limited to industry development and environmental legislation. It will remove merit review rights from planning legislation which govern residential and commercial developments and land use changes. The bill is not limited to so-called potentially vexatious legal reviews. It removes the right of review from everyone. And as I said, we also see no evidence that third-party merit reviews have actually tied up or delayed development. And if they had, Madam Speaker, the government's job is to look after the people and protect them from predatory development, not to make the lives of big industry as comfortable and profitable as possible. And finally, Madam Speaker, along with much of what this House has passed, this bill is out of step with other jurisdictions. Other states and the Australian Capital Territory provide opportunities for third-party merit reviews of planning, petroleum and water decisions. No other state or territory has removed third-party merit reviews entirely for these areas in the ways proposed by this bill. To conclude, Madam Speaker, I want to take a moment to reflect on what is clearly emerging as a priority for this government and what they are making clear to their communities. The government's move to eliminate crucial checks and balances provided by merits reviews just 1 week after passing the Territory Coordinator Bill sends a clear message. This government is determined to consolidate power, erode democratic processes, silence public input on decision-making and legislation, and prioritise the profits of large industries over the rights and well-being of Territorians. The government's actions continue to threaten the integrity of our democracy and the future of our environment. I don't view the government's decisions in isolation, I view them together, and what is emerging from this chamber is a dangerous lack of regard for the public interest. Like the member for Drysdale, I despair at the polarisation in our community, polarisation fed by those in power. I think our job in this chamber is to work together for what is best for the Northern Territory, not what is best for a political party, not what is best for private interests and political donors. Territorians deserve better than what this bill offers them. And as part of that, Territorians need access to third-party merit reviews, now more than ever. I will continue to fight for transparency, accountability and the protection of our community's voice, and I invite my fellow members of Parliament to join with me in voting against this bill. Thank you.